In the eyes of outsiders, I am not only the future heir to the James family media, but also a powerful actor in the entertainment industry. I can be said to be a representative of successful people. However, my fiancé and my older sister hated me for 10 years, convinced that I bullied their first love, David, and revealed my crimes to the world at my engagement party. The fiancé said, "He is just a scum who bullies his classmates. I will never marry him." In the video broadcast live on the entire network, David smiled calmly and said, "I don't blame him anymore." Looking back, the boat has already sailed through thousands of mountains. Overnight, he became famous, but I was criticized by thousands of people, and even had sulfuric acid thrown at me by extreme fans. In despair, I died with him. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my senior year of high school. David poured water on his head and asked me with a smile, "Have you figured out how to apologize to me later?" The next second, I jumped up, grabbed his collar, dragged him into the toilet, and pressed him into the pit. I laughed and said, "Let me teach you what real bullying is. Your mouth stinks, remember to wash it before you fart." The last memory I have of my past life is the near-death pain caused by concentrated sulfuric acid splashing into my eyeballs. I endured the great pain and found David, who was holding my sister, in my blurred vision. Then I rushed over with a cake knife and stabbed him in the chest. I gritted my teeth and said, "Let's go to hell together." The story is about to begin. If you like it, remember to like and subscribe. I opened my eyes again, and the extremely clear scene made me stunned for 2 seconds. Until I saw David, who looked much younger, not far away. He was wearing a washed-out school uniform, and was turning on the faucet to pour water on his head. While pouring water, he smiled and asked me, "Guess, will they believe me or you?" It suddenly occurred to me that this was the day when I was accused of bullying him in my previous life. Seeing me standing there in a daze, David's smile deepened. He said, "Have you thought about how to apologize to me later, Mr. James?" Ha ha. New and old hatreds surged in my heart. I rushed over, grabbed his collar, and dragged him into the toilet. Amid his sudden and shrill screams, I pressed his entire face into the pit. I gritted my teeth and said, "You want to put the blame on me just because I poured some cold water on you? Come, I will teach you in person what real bullying is." David struggled like crazy, his arms flailing like motors, but he still couldn't break free from my shackles. He could only bury his face in the dirty water and make a vague sound with his mouth. "Asshole, James, let me go." Gurgle, gurgle. I laughed up to the sky and said, "Your mouth stinks, remember to wash it before you complain later." Whether this was a return to the past or a hallucination after death, it didn't matter, I went completely crazy. In my previous life, I died on the most glorious day of my life. On that day, I won my 3rd Best Actor award, wore a haute couture suit, and stood at a grand engagement party broadcast live on the internet with my childhood sweetheart, Sophia. Sophia proudly announced to everyone, "I will never marry a scum who bullied his classmates in high school." As I stared at him in disbelief, David walked out from the stage. He smiled calmly and said, "James, do you still remember me? David, the man you bullied for 10 years. You probably never thought that one day I would be on an equal footing with you. But it doesn't matter. I don't blame you anymore." Looking back, I have already sailed through thousands of mountains. The whole network broadcast live, and he became famous. Before I could react, a bunch of reporters arranged by my sisters Emily and Sophia rushed in and surrounded me. Someone asked, "Mr. James, I heard that you still act like a big shot and bully newcomers on the set?" An extreme fan rushed out of the crowd, threw sulfuric acid in my face, and shouted, "Death to the bully." Sulfuric acid splashed over me, and the overwhelming burning pain stuck to my face. My vision never cleared up again. It was like falling from heaven to hell in a flash. Waking up from the memories of my past life, I let go and watched David fall to the ground, barely breathing. His once arrogant face was now full of dirt, and I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I smiled and said, "Cry now go out and tell the whole world that I bullied you. I'm waiting to see your show." The last line of my voice suddenly rose. I thought of the pain of having my facial features burned by sulfuric acid in my previous life, and I stepped hard on David's face twice before turning and leaving. Downstairs in the teaching building, my deskmate Mark was waiting for me. He said, "PE class has already started for a long time, what are you doing upstairs?" I downplayed it and said, "Oh, I bullied a new classmate." Mark turned around in shock and asked, "What?" I said, "A famous opinion leader once said that when the whole world thinks you're a bully, you'd better really be one." Mark wondered, who is the opinion leader? Did he really say that? I responded, "It's not important." He and I walked to the edge of the playground and bumped into Sophia. She was not in the same class as me, but all the classmates in the school knew that she was my childhood sweetheart. Sophia's eyes slid across my face and then fell behind me. She frowned and said, "James, why are you so late? By the way, I heard there's a new transfer student in your class." In my previous life, every time David and I had a conflict, Sophia always advised me to be more generous and asked me to apologize to David and let it go. She seemed to be on my side, but in fact, she confirmed my crime of bullying with just a few words. Thinking of this, I got so angry that I slapped Sophia with my hands behind my back without any warning. Sophia covered her face with her hands, her face full of disbelief. Mark beside her was shocked again. Sophia's face flashed with anger for a moment, but the next second, she turned into a wronged look. She raised her eyes, took my hand, and said with tears in her eyes, "What's wrong, James? Did I do something wrong?" In my previous life, I didn't know until much later that Sophia was abandoned by her mother in an amusement park when she was a child and was taken in by an orphanage for a period of time. There, she met a sunny and cheerful little boy who slept in the same bed with her, gave her a candy, and was the only light in her life. This light was David. Moreover, Sophia recognized David on his first day as a transfer student. She believed David's words that I bullied him and hated me to the core. However, Sophia had to give herself to me because she was an illegitimate daughter. Only if Sophia married me would her family recognize her as a daughter. Thinking of this, I said, "Let's break up." Sophia's pupils suddenly shrank and she asked, "James, why? You have to give me a reason." I raised my left hand and wiped the place she touched with my right hand. I looked at my palm and said, "I don't want to talk to my mistress's daughter. It's dirty." Is that a good enough reason? After we left, Mark cautiously asked me if I was possessed. It was not surprising that he asked me that, because when I was in high school, I was so straightforward and passionate about Sophia. I picked her up after school every day, brought her flowers and gifts, said a word for her, stayed up late to bake cookies for her until my face was dusty, and still gave them to her with a smile. My preference was so obvious that the whole world knew it. But now it's different. James, who just entered his third year of high school, is dead. The one standing here now is the cuckold god of war James who died once. David didn't show up again the whole day. I know he still cares about his personal reputation. It would be bad if the news of him being bullied by being pressed into the toilet got out. If there is a risk, he will not take action easily. Soon it was Saturday, my 18th birthday. My parents had said early in the morning that they would hold a grand dinner to celebrate my coming of age. But something happened at work, so they had to be late. The crystal chandelier was shining brightly. I walked to the living room in my high-end suit with a calm and unconcerned pace. I saw my sister Emily from a distance. She was wearing a black evening dress with a chest-binding look on her face. She said to me in a cold tone, "James, come here." I walked over and pretended not to notice Sophia, who was looking resentful, and David, who was frowning, standing beside Emily. I smiled nonchalantly and said, "Sister, what do you want me to do? Do you have any gifts for me?" Emily looked at me coldly for a moment and said, "Bullying classmates and insulting friends, James, is this what the tutors in the James family taught you?" Emily's voice did not decrease at all when she spoke, and for a moment, all the guests present looked in her direction. I frowned and asked, "Sister, what are you talking about? I don't understand." I looked at David, pinched my eyebrows and said, "Who did I insult? When did I bully my classmates? I don't even know him." My sister frowned and said, "It's no use being stubborn now. If you do something wrong, you will have to pay the price. My parents are not here today, so I will discipline you for them." Then Emily walked up to me, looked at me, and said word by word, "Kneel down." In the huge banquet hall, countless people cast their eyes to watch the show. People were talking about, "What? Bullying classmates? James still does things like this? Oh, James must be used to being arrogant and domineering. He is not happy when others are outstanding." Someone else said, "Fortunately his sister is doing justice. If you ask me, the son of the James family is a waste. This family will be ruined without his sister." Under David's smug and provocative gaze, I straightened my back, smiled and sneered, "What nonsense are you talking about, sister? Those who know you will think you are Emily, and those who don't will think you are a wandering ghost. In my life, I will kneel to the sky, the earth, and the ancestral tablets, but I will not recognize a traitor as my family member." I stretched my neck twice, looked her up and down for a moment, and laughed maliciously. Then I said, "How about this, go out and find a building to jump off, and I will kneel down and kowtow 3 times to send you off." Emily's face turned red. David put his hands behind his back and said in a fake tone, "Classmate James, I know you don't like me, but it's okay for you to bully me, but how can you talk to your sister like that?" He looked heartbroken and sighed heavily. Sophia, who was standing by, saw this and a hint of joy flashed in her eyes. Then she nodded sadly and whispered, "James, since you did something wrong, just admit your mistake and apologize. There's no need to be like this." I also opened my eyes wide and said distressfully, "I'm sorry, I don't understand dog barking. Can you repeat it in our human language?" "Shut up." Emily bit her lip and continued, "James, you are so shameless. Do you know what is a sense of propriety and honor? Who taught you to be so foul-mouthed and uneducated?" I was not surprised at all when my sister said this. She always looked superior, and her favorite thing to do was to teach me a lesson. When we were young, everyone jokingly called it the blood suppression between siblings, and the deeper the love, the more severe the blame. But in this life again, I know very well that my sister simply hates me and thinks that my parents favor sons over daughters, so they have to give her a brother to inherit the family business. Even if this is not the case, she feels from the bottom of her heart that I have taken everything from her, and wants to prove that I am a waste and that she is much better than me. So no matter what I say, she will not believe it. Instead, she will have strong prejudice and nail me to the pillar of shame again and again. I curled my lips and sneered, "Who taught me?" "Sister, you finally asked the right question. Our mother is busy taking care of my father, how could she have time to teach me? So I am so shameless, of course I learned it from you." I paused, and whispered to her provocatively with the words she hated the most, "Tell me, as a girl, how can you get married like this?" In my previous life, I was always afraid of and loved Emily. She was several years older than me, and in my heart she was always a sister I respected. When I was a child, my mother was busy taking care of my father, who had limited mobility and dealing with company matters, so it was Emily who disciplined me. If I made the slightest mistake, I would be hit on the palm of my hand with a ruler, and Emily would not allow me to eat as punishment. When I went home with the curly-haired stray puppy I picked up, she would not allow the nanny to open the door for me. She said, "It's dirty. We don't welcome such things at home." I was at a loss, holding the puppy, and sat on the steps at the door all night. At that time, I was still young, and I always thought that Emily's personality was like this, with a sharp tongue but a soft heart. It was not until David appeared that I realized that my sister was not always so cold to everyone. She was very kind to David. I saw her handing David hot milk, acting coquettishly to David, and even picking up a skinny stray cat on a rainy day, and asking David in a pretentious way, "Can we raise a cat together?" When David got drunk and hugged her and talked nonsense, she listened attentively, with tenderness in her eyes. In my previous life, I was trapped in a love scam, wondering why my sister hated me so much and why my fiancé always turned her elbows outward. After living a new life, I suddenly realized that I am a completely independent individual, and it is not that I cannot live without love. This birthday dinner did not end successfully because when Emily and I were arguing, my mother finally came back pushing my father in a wheelchair. They thanked me politely and sent the guests away. David wanted to repeat his old tricks in front of my dad and continue to slander me, but he was stopped by my dad with a sneer. My dad said, "I'm sorry, classmate, we will handle the James family's affairs ourselves, please leave first." David was stunned, looked at my sister helplessly, then turned and left. When Emily and I were the only ones left at home, my mom pushed my dad back to his room and settled him down before saying, "Okay, now tell me what's going on." Before Emily could speak, I spoke first. "Some time ago, a new transfer student came to our school. On his first day, he poured water on his head and insisted that it was me who did it, saying that I bullied him. Later I found out that this person was the poor student my sister had been supporting, named David." Emily, who was sitting on the sofa, suddenly looked up at me, her eyes full of shock. "Are you surprised, sister? I discovered your secret affair so early." I held my forehead and said in a disappointed tone, "It's not a big deal, just a birthday. I just don't understand why my sister doesn't believe me." After saying that, I couldn't help but sneer in my heart. Isn't it just playing dumb? Who can't do that? But the next second, my mom said, "Okay, no matter who bullied whom, don't mention it anymore. If the matter gets out, it won't be good for both of you." Back at school, I started bullying David openly, pouring ink into his drawer, laughing at him when he recited a text in accented English, and tearing up his physics test paper and throwing the pieces over his head. I said, go ahead and file a complaint." I smiled and said, "Isn't this what you are best at?" A piece of torn paper floated down from his head. He looked at me, with a flash of deep hatred in his eyes. In the end, David could only apologize to me with a face full of humiliation. I'm sorry, James. If I have done anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, I apologize to you now. I will correct it, okay?" I smiled and said, "I am unhappy just because you are alive." I raised my eyebrows curiously and asked, "How are you going to correct it? Are you going to die now?" David was speechless and could not utter a word. In the end, he could only continue to beg for my forgiveness. For the first time, I discovered how satisfying it is to be a bad guy. Of course, he told the teacher, and the teacher asked me to go to the office. I was dazed and frowning, and I told him what happened at the birthday dinner. Finally, I took out a hospital diagnosis certificate and said, that day, because of his rumor, my sister humiliated me in front of so many people. Every day when I think about it, I toss and turn and have trouble falling asleep. My chest aches and I even wake up from nightmares. I am still seeing a psychologist and taking medicine. The doctor said that I have severe depression. In the end, the teacher had to comfort me instead. Everyone could see that I loathed David. Mark asked in confusion, "Why are you targeting David so much? Has he ever done anything bad?" I turned my head and smiled at him. Just because I'm a bully and rely on my family's wealth, can't I look down on new classmates who come from poor families? Mark was speechless and said, "Don't give me that." He rolled his eyes at me and continued, "James, if you are that kind of person, why don't you bully me? My family is much poorer than his. On the first day we became friends, you bought all my stationery for 3 years of high school. I might as well believe that I am God than to believe that you bully your classmates. Yes, everyone understands this truth. But my sister and my fiancé don't understand." I curled the corners of my lips, but there was no smile in my eyes. The school's 100th anniversary celebration will be held in a month. In his previous life, David performed a piano solo at the celebration party, and was noticed by the special admissions office teacher who came to watch the ceremony, and was given the only special admission qualification. As for me, I had practiced guitar for more than 10 years and had prepared a song. Then Sophia found me, snuggled into my arms at sunset on campus, and said softly, "Can you not go, James? I'll be jealous. I just want you to sing for me alone." I was also a fool at that time, and I was complacent and thought that this was a sign that Sophia liked me. So on the day of the performance, I really didn't go, but sang love songs for her one after another in the empty classroom. At the end of the song, thunderous cheers came from the auditorium. Sophia heard it and suddenly laughed. She was always gentle and taciturn in front of me, and even her smile was light and shallow, as if covered by a layer of mist. It was the first time I saw her emotions fluctuate so obviously, so I put down the guitar and asked stupidly, "Are you happy?" Sophia paused and said, "Yeah, very happy." At that time, I thought Sophia was happy because I played for her alone. It was only much later that I realized that she was happy because David's performance was a great success. The only light in her life had a bright future. This time, I submitted the program I had prepared long ago, but the performance was not a guitar solo. I pulled all the students in the class who were interested in performing together and arranged a group program. I paid for everyone to hire performance teachers, buy the most expensive performance costumes, customize the best musical instruments and props, and hire the most luxurious dance group. In contrast, David's piano solo seems too simple. I don't know what he complained to Emily, but that night when I came home from school, she stopped me in the garden. "James." My sister looked at me expressionlessly and said, "For the school anniversary performance, your program, you should give up." I smiled and said, "Emily, what are you barking about?" She snorted coldly, "Don't think I'm negotiating with you." Emily's eyes showed a trace of cold mockery, and she said, "If you insist on going, you will bear the consequences at your own risk." I stopped, stared into her cold eyes and said, "Sister, your lover has studied piano for more than 10 years, but he has no confidence to win when competing with me on the same stage? He is such a loser." Sophia found me just a few days before the school anniversary performance. Sophia said aggrievedly, "James, it was my fault for what happened last time. But you blocked all my contact information and refused to see me. I don't know what happened. James, do you have a misunderstanding about me, or do you like someone else?" When Sophia said the last few words, her voice even carried a hint of pain. She said aggrievedly, "But, you clearly said that you will always love me the most." A mixture of anger and sharp pain suddenly surged into my heart. I had loved Sophia sincerely for many years. She said she didn't like me playing lovers with actresses, so I really gave up many olive branches offered by famous directors. Sophia said David had a bad family background and was bullied in the orphanage, so she asked me not to take it too seriously, so I forgave his offenses again and again. I just wanted to exchange my sincerity for sincerity, but in return, they only slandered and hated me for 10 years. At this moment, I suddenly didn't even want to pretend anymore. I reached out and grabbed Sophia's clothes and pushed her hard against the tree trunk behind us. Sophia gasped in pain, but before she could open her mouth, I slapped her in the face again. I didn't hold back at all, and her fair face immediately became red and swollen. I got close to her and said word by word, "You and David have known each other for a long time, I already know that. Don't you like him? Why are you crying in front of me again? Are you thinking of using me to pave the way for your first love? You are just like your mother who likes to be someone else's mistress, so despicable. After she said the last word, the emotions in Sophia's eyes brewed like a sudden storm, but she couldn't utter another word. I sneered, let go of her, and turned away. That night, I had a dream. It was a rare dream that involved what happened after I died in my previous life. After the knife pierced David's chest, I died in extreme pain, and he was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Outside the ward, Sophia choked up and said to Emily, "You clearly said that nothing would happen to David." Emily rolled her eyes at her and said coldly, "I've already agreed to let you be my mistress, and the three of us will live together. What else do you want? You're an illegitimate daughter. Can you enter the Sophia family without my help?" Sophia trembled slightly, frowned and retorted, "Are you helping me?" "Obviously." Sophia pursed her lips and said nothing in the middle of her words. Emily snorted coldly and continued, "Yes, it was my brother who helped you, but he is dead. You were the one who contacted the person who killed him. Have you forgotten?" Sophia stood there in silence. The red light on the door of the emergency room flashed. After a moment, David was pushed out. The doctor said, "The patient is still in critical condition." Sophia's eyes swept across his pale face, and then she said word by word, "I haven't forgotten, and I have never regretted it." I woke up from my dream, stumbled into the bathroom, and retched for a long time on the toilet. When I stood up, I leaned on the table and saw myself in the mirror. My bloodshot eyes were filled with hatred. "No regrets?" I murmured, "It doesn't matter. You will regret it in this life. Regret being born. Just wait and see." On the day of the school anniversary performance, I ran into David by the school's artificial lake. David was very proud, and he looked determined to win. He said, "James, do you think that being the second-generation rich kid in the James family can protect you forever? You have been bullying me for so long, do you really think I won't fight back? I will make you pay 1,000 times the price. Even if you know the relationship between Sophia and me, so what? She loves me, and your sister only loves me. You are just a loser who relies on your parents for everything, you loser." David kept talking for a long time, and I smiled and just said one thing to him, "Is the toilet water delicious?" Then, as his expression suddenly changed, I turned around and left. In the evening, the blazing sunset spread across the sky. My classmates and I changed into our performance clothes and rushed to the backstage with our musical instruments. Halfway through the run, I realized that the props I had prepared for the finale were missing. Did I leave them in the rehearsal room? I thought about it carefully and decided to go back to look for them. Mark asked, "Do you want me to come with you?" I said, "It's okay. There aren't many things. I can carry them all by myself." I smiled and said, "You guys go backstage to prepare first, and then ask the set designer to arrange the order of our props." The huge complex was empty. I took 2 steps at a time and strode up the stairs, but stopped when I was about to reach the rehearsal room. A few steps away, on the steps, stood a person. The golden red light of the sunset shone in from the window, but only fell on a small part of her face. In the dark shadow, her sinister eyes flashed. "It's Sophia." The next second, when I was still wondering, she pounced on me unexpectedly. My thoughts were delayed for a second, and when I reacted, my body felt lighter and I fell backwards. There were dozens of high stairs behind me, and I landed on my back and rolled down the stairs heavily. I fell beside the iron railing in overwhelming pain. My ankle bone almost cracked and I was completely unable to move. Sophia came over and squatted beside me, still looking at me with those innocent yet aggrieved eyes. Sophia said, "James, don't blame me. You have everything since you were born. Even if you missed this opportunity, there are still many ways to go. But David is different from you. He has done his best within the scope of his efforts." After saying that, Sophia raised her foot and stepped hard on my leg. The scene in my dream suddenly emerged in my mind. She was standing outside the ward, together with my sister, watching David being pushed out of the emergency room with eyes full of tenderness and love. When she mentioned me, her voice was indifferent and she said, "I have never regretted it. The most crucial 15 years of my life, the most passionate and sincere love, were tied to such a person." I suddenly laughed out loud, and just before she stepped on my calf, I quickly pulled away. I yelled, "Bitch!" The pain from my sprained ankle made my breathing choke, but I still took advantage of Sophia's lack of reaction, grabbed her hair, and slammed her against the railing. I gritted my teeth and said, "You bastard, you want to hurt me again? You're fucking dreaming." Sophia's head hit the iron railing with a loud bang, and her forehead hit the sharp corner. Immediately, bright red blood gushed out, flowing down her cheeks and dripping onto her clothes. Sophia let out a painful wail, "James. I took 2 breaths, let go of her hair, and stood up. My sprained ankle was still hurting, but it didn't matter. I looked down at Sophia's eyes that were out of focus due to pain, and slowly began to laugh. I said, "What a love-struck girl, you are willing to sacrifice yourself and let me be ruined here to fight for a future for your sweetheart. Is this the warning Emily gave me? You have already discussed who will be the boss and who will be the subordinate, right? It's really disgusting and stupid." I took off my shirt and wiped the blood off Sophia's face until the white shirt was stained. Then I left her there and ran into the auditorium as the sky darkened. In the distance, a melodious piano sound came from the auditorium. David played the same piece from his previous life, Debussy's Moonlight. David sat in front of the pure white piano on the stage, wearing a high-end suit. The stage was completely dark, with only a spotlight shining on him, like the only spark in the dark night. Just like in my previous life, at my engagement party, when he climbed up on my flesh and blood, it was so bright that it was dazzling. I ran along the narrow path between 2 rows of seats, pushed away the security guards and hosts who tried to stop me, climbed onto the stage, and stood in the only beam of light. I kicked David over and punched the piano. In his dazed eyes, I said angrily, "Play, play, play. I told you to play. You dared to send someone to harm me, and you're still playing your mother's music." Of course I knew that there was a teacher from the special admissions office sitting in the audience. In his previous life, after listening to David's song Moonlight, he contacted David at the end of the performance and asked him if he was willing to accept the only special admission quota. David agreed, which was just the first step in his bright future. Later, with the help of Emily, he was accepted as a close disciple by a music master at school. Because of the filming, I had to play a genius pianist with autism. Under the arrangement of my agent, I went to learn from the master. However, after meeting David, Emily blocked me at the door when I returned home at night. She looked at me with disgust and asked, "James, are you done? Just because you are inferior to David in every way, you hate him so much that you even tear up the handwritten music score he gave to his teacher? What a bad guy." I was stunned for a few seconds. When I reacted, I subconsciously tried to defend myself, but she interrupted me and said, "You are the young liar born of an old liar. You are a liar. I don't believe a single word of your excuses." Amid the uproar from the audience, I heard someone screaming, "Blood! Look, he's covered in blood." The mottled shirt mixed with blood and dust, the dust all over my body, and the swollen ankles. Every detail of my body confirmed the truth of what I said. David held onto the piano stool and stumbled to his feet. The look in his eyes when he looked at me was filled with deep resentment and hatred, but he eventually returned to his usual politeness. David said aggrievely, "James, I don't know what you are talking about. Maybe there is some misunderstanding. But this is my performance now. Out of respect for the audience, you shouldn't run up so rashly." Emily stood up from the audience angrily and scolded me shrilly, "James, you are crazy." I ignored him, pushed David away, sat down on the piano stool, and played Beethoven's Symphony No. 5. In my previous life, I spent 3 months studying this piece of music to play it for real in the movie without using my hands. I didn't master it, but it was good enough for this kind of scene. The passionate piano music, accompanied by a slight electric sound, resounded in the empty dome of the auditorium. After playing a piece, I turned around and stared at him, saying in a loud voice, "You ruined my birthday party, provoked the relationship between my family and me, and spread rumors about me in front of my family and friends. These are all small things. I will repay you in my own way. But you instructed Sophia to push me down the stairs and break my legs, just to prevent me from appearing on this stage." I paused, staring at his suddenly pale face, and sneered, "The piano is what you are most proud of. Don't you even have the confidence to beat me in a competition?" There was chaos on and off the stage. Finally, the teacher in charge of the school anniversary performance took David and me off the stage. The host came up to smooth things over. The next program was the group performance we had arranged. I passed by my classmates who were performing backstage. Mark rushed over, shook my hand and asked, "James, what happened to you? Are you hurt? I should have gone with you." I smiled and said, "I'm fine." I smiled and patted his shoulder to comfort him. I say, "Go and perform. You've been rehearsing for so long, give yourself a satisfactory answer. The first place in the school anniversary performance can get a bonus of $100,000. From the very beginning, this program was not arranged for me. I watched them walk onto the stage, and I felt relieved. Then I closed my eyes amidst the intense pain and fatigue that surged through my body, and even my consciousness was immersed in darkness. I woke up in the hospital. That night, Emily rushed into the ward and said angrily, "You are crazy, James. Emily wants to send her lover to a dazzling and shining position little by little. But I understand Emily's inner thoughts better. Destroying a man and letting another man grow up under her attention, isn't this the best way to prove that she is much better than men? But how could I give her such a chance again? I laughed and said, "What should we do, sis? He hasn't even finished playing the song, and your attempt to break my legs has been exposed. He can no longer go to the school he wants to go to." I suddenly remembered something, and I said, "By the way, your accomplice Sophia is still lying on the floor of the complex building. If you have time, remember to send her to the hospital." I grabbed the corner of the quilt and laughed, pulling the wound on my ankle, and my facial features were slightly distorted in pain. From the reflection of Emily's pupils, I saw what I look like now, like a madman. Or maybe I have been a madman since the day I died in my previous life. Emily subconsciously took 2 steps back, but fear flashed across her eyes and she returned to her usual aloof and cold appearance. Emily said sarcastically, "Was it useful, James? Even if David failed, you didn't succeed. Not only that, your crazy look was completely recorded by the camera next to you. This time, you can't get away with it by showing a forged diagnosis certificate. The school has already contacted your parents and is preparing to expel you." But the next second, ha ha ha. I laughed, "It's just a dropout. Do I care about that? Emily, don't forget, I'm a child of the James family. Just like Sophia said, if this path is gone, I still have many other options. From the beginning, I had only one goal, and that was to bring David down, nothing more. I thought, I might as well make all the things David slandered me in my previous life come true. I will block all the paths David walked in my previous life. We haven't settled the accounts yet, David." I caused a scene at the school anniversary ceremony in public, and beat up Sophia and David. This, along with the incident of me bullying David at school, was posted online, causing quite a stir in public opinion. The disputes between the rich second generation and the poor students have always been a hot topic, whether it was 10 years ago or 10 years later. The difference is that this time, because of my clear speech on the stage, my embarrassed appearance, and the song Destiny, which was filled with extreme anger and madness, many people stood on my side. Netizens commented, "It doesn't necessarily mean that the rich second generation bullies the poor. Listening to James' piano playing, he doesn't seem like that kind of person." Another person replied, "So funny, the guy above is a troll, he can even tell fortunes with the sound of the piano." Someone else said, "No, let's put it another way. Look at James. His ankle is swollen like a piece of bread and his body is covered in blood. Who bullies others to get themselves into this state?" Someone else said, "Let's put everything else aside, this guy's mental state is 8 generations ahead of his time." Finally, Mark and a few other good friends of mine went to confront the netizens. "James is a very righteous person, not what you say. It was David who provoked him first." There was a lot of noise online. I was in the hospital these days, and I don't know what Emily said to my mother. Anyway, the day I was discharged from the hospital and went home, my mother looked at me and said in a very cold manner, "I haven't taken care of you for a while, and you have become lawless to this extent. Since your school doesn't want you to continue studying, why don't you go abroad to study, hide for a few years, and come back when the storm has calmed down?" I was not surprised by my mother's attitude, because she was very biased towards Emily. Her reason seemed simple: I was born with a sin because I was born with a difficult labor. At that time, my sister was very easy to take care of without crying or making a fuss, which gave my mother the illusion that it was easy to take care of children, so she discussed with my father about having a second child so that we could take care of each other. This was her suggestion, but who knew that after giving birth to me, my mother insisted that I was born because my father wanted a son to leave an heir to the James family, otherwise she would not have to suffer this pain. She said that giving birth to me was something that the James family owed her, and I owed it to my sister. So, when everything happened at the engagement party in my previous life, my mother knew everything, but she didn't tell me anything until I died. But it doesn't matter. I curled my lips and said, "Okay, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm planning to study finance and business abroad." The two people in front of me were stunned for a moment, and when my mother looked at me again, there was a deeper meaning in her eyes. I applied to the school very quickly. Sophia's injury was much more serious than mine, and she was still lying in the hospital after I recovered. When Mark came to see me, he said, "I heard David went to see her and comforted her by saying it wasn't her fault, it was you who was too heartless. You two are a crazy couple, they wanted to break your legs, how can you be so heartless?" I looked at the fruit basket in Mark's hand and said, "Isn't this expensive? The bonus is for you to keep for yourselves." Mark sighed and said, "It's okay. Everyone knew you were going abroad, so they each contributed a portion of the money and asked me to buy it to see you." Mark put the fruit basket on the table, took a deep breath, as if he had made up his mind. He said, "James, I asked in confusion, "What? Mark continued, I feel like you know something I don't. Something was different after David transferred here that day, and I don't know how to put it. If you don't understand, just treat it as nonsense. Mark came over and carefully tapped my shoulder. He said, brother, come back soon. I will still be your friend when you return to your country. The night before I left, I pushed my dad's wheelchair and sat with him on the balcony where the evening breeze blew. He looked at me, wanting to say something but stopping himself. I held his hand, looked into his eyes and said, don't worry about me, Dad. In my previous life, my dad died in an accident caused by falling objects from a high altitude. When he was alive, no matter how partial my mom was, Emily didn't dare to kill me directly. Thinking of this, my heart suddenly shuddered. In the later part of my previous life, Emily was like a crazy fan chasing a star, and she was almost crazy for David. When my dad's accident happened, it was Emily who pushed him out to relax. Is there any other hidden reason behind this accident? Thinking of this, my heart trembled, and I subconsciously used more force on the hand holding his. I said, you must pay attention to safety and protect yourself. After a pause, I still said, be sure to be careful of Emily. My dad replied, James, you seem different from before. My dad looked at me blankly, sighed, and said, in the final analysis, it is my fault as a father. If I hadn't had a car accident and the company was handed over to your mother, you wouldn't have to take this step. After that, my dad sighed and rebuked me through gritted teeth. If I wasn't disabled, I would have stopped you from getting involved with the illegitimate daughter of the Sophia family. What did I tell you at the time? I said that this girl had ulterior motives and asked you to take a closer look, but what did you do? You had to refute me, saying that she was very good and that I was old and confused. You see, you have nothing in the end. On your birthday, I asked your mother to give you some of the shares, but you even tried to undermine me, saying that you had no intention of managing the company and that it would be fine to let your sister manage it in the future. It made me so angry. At that time, I hoped that you could be smarter and more decisive, but if the current situation has been achieved at a painful price, I would rather you stay stupid. Alas! I was really stupid in my previous life. I always used my best intentions to guess other people's intentions, so I was tricked by David countless times, but I never really killed him. So in the end, I died at my own engagement party. I pressed my eyes and chuckled, no, Dad. In this world where the strong prey on the weak, fools are the only ones who get eaten. I thought, what a pity, I only understood this truth after I died once. I was 18 years old when I left the country with my suitcase. The surrounding environment and everything I could touch were completely unfamiliar, but I didn't feel scared at all because I knew too much about what would happen next. Even if the details were unclear, the time nodes of several major turning points were enough for me to do many things. The most important thing is 2 years later. In my previous life, when I was 20 years old, Emily had reached a cooperation with a man named Robert in San Francisco. That man had the most advanced core technology in his hands, and in the next 5 years, he helped Emily to completely control the James family step by step. I invested the money my father gave me in the stock market, and with the remaining memories of my past life, I multiplied the startup capital many times. Then, while I spent twice as much time in school to study, I used the money to invest in several companies that later became Fortune 500 companies in my past life. At this time, many of them were still in their infancy, which gave me a chance to buy at the bottom. During this period, Mark contacted me many times, with a voice call every week. He told me that the brothers missed me after I left, and said that he had a much better life with the bonus he received. Mark said, some time ago, Harvard University held its own recruitment, and David applied, but was rejected in the interview. It was really funny. The teacher in charge of the interview was actually at our school anniversary performance that day. She said that David's performance of Moonlight was muddy and not as good as your performance of Fate. Ha ha ha, the uglier David's face was when he came out, the happier I felt. The college entrance examination results came out, and I ranked first in the school and third in the city. When I received this news, I was tortured by the final exams for the double degree, but I still smiled sincerely. I said, congratulations. Mark also said happily, James, I'm still waiting for you to come back and continue to be my buddy. My dad would often call me to tell me about Emily's recent movements, and to ask how I was doing out there, and whether I had enough money. Then when I told him a little about my current situation, my dad sighed with relief and helplessness. My dad said with concern, balance work and rest, don't push yourself too hard. If you need any help, tell me, don't feel embarrassed. So I told him Robert's name and some information I remembered, and asked him to find someone to help me find a person. I said, Dad, you must keep this secret from my sister. I arrived in San Francisco a month earlier than Emily. Outside the school, I was about to ask for directions when I suddenly saw a familiar face on the lawn not far away. Robert, who looked several years younger. In front of him stood a tall, thin girl with short hair and glasses, looking at him coldly. The girl said, "That's the result of my experiment. Who allowed you to use it to discuss business cooperation with others without my permission?" Robert smiled and said, "What's yours, what's mine? Aren't they all things we made together?" The girl said, "The idea was mine, and I did the experiment. You just helped me for a while and helped record some data. Why do you think you have the right to deal with my things?" The girl didn't give in at all. Hearing what she said, Robert's expression darkened. Robert said coldly, "Olivia, don't go too far. We are about to graduate. Don't I have to consider our future? What's the point of holding on to things? Isn't it better to find a reliable company to cooperate in the development to get the most benefits?" Olivia responded, "I'm saying this for the last time, that's mine." Olivia looked at him indifferently and continued, "I have the patent, and you don't even know the core technology. You still want to find someone to develop it together? As long as I'm alive, it's impossible. Also, we break up. From now on, you have nothing to do with me." After she finished speaking, she turned and left. Robert stood there, staring at her back. His eyes slowly grew colder, and a hint of murderous intent almost flashed in his pupils. I stood there, and suddenly realized. In my previous life, I heard my mother ask Emily how she managed to get a talent like Robert. At that time, Emily smiled and said, "Because he needed my help with something." More importantly, in my previous life, I had never heard of the existence of Olivia. I managed to meet Olivia in a cafe far from her school. Olivia sat down opposite me and said straight to the point, "Mr. James, I know why you are here, but I don't sell my stuff." I responded, "Why?" Olivia hesitated for a moment, but still said, "At the moment, it's just a semi-finished product." I suddenly paused as I was bringing the coffee cup to my mouth. Olivia continued, "I know that you businessmen care about commercial value, but I don't. I only care about what kind of results I can get in the end and what kind of changes it can bring to human technology. For me, it itself is the most important." I looked at Olivia intently. When she talked about her ideals, her bare face exuded an indescribable dazzling brilliance. Olivia was a dazzling girl and should have become a great scientist who would go down in history. But in her previous life, because of the selfish desires of others, she died in a strange country and disappeared like a speck of dust under the wheel of history. Olivia waved her hand and said, "Mr. James, if there is nothing else, I will leave first." I suddenly stretched out my hand to stop Olivia, looked at her sincerely and said, "Ms. Olivia, I am willing to provide you with all the funds and other resources you need for scientific research. And you only need to help me a little after you get the finished product. Your results will still belong to you, and your name will be written in history. Is this okay?" The day I returned to China, the first snow fell all over the ground. When I walked out of the airport with my suitcase, I saw a billboard next to me. On it was a poster of a movie starring David. In the past few years, I was busy setting up a company abroad so that I could compete with Emily, who gradually took over the James family. She was also busy. After David failed to be specially recruited and failed the interview, Emily still managed to send him to the film school and successfully debuted in the entertainment industry. Emily really has always liked David. I smiled sarcastically, got into the car, and drove through the traffic covered with light snow. The car drove straight to the downstairs of the company. The bidding meeting 3 days later was another crucial node. Olivia and I stayed in the company for 3 days to ensure that the plan was optimized to the best. Then, at the public bidding site, we won the order without any suspense. When the winning company was announced, I stood up from my seat and met Emily's shocked gaze. Emily said in surprise, "James." I curled the corners of my lips and responded calmly, "Long time no see, sister." When we finished, Emily chased me out and blocked me in the hallway, with a hint of disbelief in her tone. She asked, "Is Thunder your company? After Olivia disappeared, you hid her, right?" I smiled and said, "You are anxious, Emily." I raised my eyebrows and continued, "What do you mean by hidden by me? You don't know her at all. Why are you so obsessed with finding a living person? Are you planning to commit any illegal acts?" Then, with Emily's angry eyes, I left with a big laugh. This time when I returned to China, I was extremely high profile. After I got the contract, I started to socialize and got to know many famous people in the business world. Because I had the exclusive right to use Olivia's patent and had just snatched a big project from the James family, everyone was very polite and friendly to me. This is something I never experienced in my previous life, even though I won 3 Best Actor awards. As expected, people still need to master the first-hand information of production. I raised my glass and sighed. Mark turned around and looked me up and down. He said, "I feel like you've only been away for 4 years, but you've matured 10 years since you came back. I said calmly, it's normal. After all, when you're 18, you can act crazy because you're young. Now that you've graduated from college, you have to act respectable before showing your fangs to others. After that, I raised the sign in my hand and shouted, $2 million. David, who was sitting in the first row, turned his head suddenly, and Sophia, who was sitting next to him, also looked at me. When our eyes met, she was slightly distracted. I noticed the faint scar on Sophia's forehead and suddenly found it particularly interesting. David shouted, $2,600,000. After coming to his senses, he immediately raised his sign and started bidding with me. It was obvious that he wanted to buy this diamond bracelet as a gift for Sophia. It seemed that compared to my sister, who was a strong woman, he obviously preferred Sophia, a little wife. I accompanied him in bidding all the way, and watched him spend $6 million to buy the bracelet. I smiled and said, you two have a very deep relationship. Sophia held the bracelet and looked at me silently. After a long while, she called out softly, James. I quickly stopped Sophia from calling me that, waved my hand and said, don't call me like that, I'm going to vomit. I took a step back and looked Sophia up and down. After a moment, I sneered and said, you are more capable than your mistress, mother. At least you succeeded in getting promoted. I just don't know how you and my sister usually arrange your schedule. You have Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and she has Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Do you have a threesome together on Sunday? I said this without disguising my voice. As expected, as soon as the auction was over, a business friend came to me to find out what happened. I said with embarrassment, my sister and the illegitimate daughter of Sophia's family both like a young actor. That's all. Who doesn't have a love-brained mind? For true love, it's a moving story, and we can accept anything. Not only did I spread gossip about the three of them, I also brought money into the film and television industry, promoted new talents, and snatched several key roles from David in his previous life. Emily was so angry that she attacked me immediately. This is exactly what I was waiting for. If I don't attack, how can I reveal my weakness? That day, my name and the company were suddenly on the hot search list. Thunder founder James, school bullying. James created his own sister's yellow rumor. David was bullied. The video of me smashing David's piano at the school anniversary performance was released again, but this time, the part where I played Destiny was cut out. Not only that, they also contacted classmates in my senior year class to prove that I had indeed bullied David at school. A girl in the video said, yes, at that time James had always disliked David. He tore up his papers, poured ink into his drawer, and led the whole class to isolate him. But because James was a rich second generation, rich and powerful, David had no way to deal with him and had to endure all the grievances. Later, the matter became a big deal and the school expelled James. As a result, James turned around and went abroad to study, and now he has transformed himself into the founder of Thunder Company. The company's stock price fell for several days in a row, and several partners called me and asked me in a tactful way what was going on. I knew that if I didn't give them a satisfactory answer, the cooperation would come to an end. I said, please wait a moment. I twirled the pen in my hand, smiled and pulled it with them, and then said, we are all businessmen, and we all know that we should not act rashly unless we are 100% sure of success. Fortunately, David was not as patient as I thought. He hated me even more than in his previous life, and now that I had a bad reputation, he took advantage of the situation and jumped out to talk about this matter in a live broadcast. David cried and said, I remember that time, the teacher asked me to stand up and read the text. Because I was in a primary school in the village, one teacher had to teach many subjects, and all of them were poor English. It's a bit embarrassing to say, when James laughed at me, it was the first time I knew that my pronunciation was not standard. I also prepared seriously for the school anniversary performance for a long time. I have learned piano for so many years. David's tone seemed calm, but at the end, the corners of his eyes were slightly red. I don't know if the commentators are just melon eaters or Emily's hired trolls, but they are posting like crazy. Brother, you are not ashamed at all. You are already great. James is shameless. He doesn't even look at his own background. What right do we have to laugh at ordinary people who work hard? Someone else said, no, I'm the only one who noticed that David said that there was no English teacher in the village primary school. Is this inconsistent with the fact that he had learned piano for more than 10 years? I couldn't help laughing when I saw the last one, but it only flashed by and was soon drowned in the ocean of words. The number of online viewers for the live broadcast that day exceeded 5 million. The next day, my mother called me back and angrily asked me to dissolve the company and merge Thunder Company into the James family group. My mother said angrily, you studied abroad for 4 years, and you caused such a mess as soon as you returned to China. Why don't you hand the company back home and apologize publicly? I looked at her quietly and said, "Mom, you have to understand that this is something that happened to my sister, not to my company." My mother snorted coldly and continued, "You were the one who bullied me first." She paused and continued, "I shouldn't have given birth to you. If your father hadn't insisted on having a son, I wouldn't have suffered so much. You will never be able to repay what you owe me and your sister." I was speechless and said, "My dad insisted on having a son? According to what you said, our family is very patriarchal, right? Then why is my sister in charge of the company? Since we were young, you have been raising sons poorly and daughters well. All the delicious food, useful things, and fun things, which one is not given priority to my sister? At that time, you said that I owed my sister, and now you still say that I owe it. I want to know what I owe." Soon, the James family and the Sophia family announced their cooperation and joined forces to attack my company. They snatched several large projects from the thunder. My mother publicly declared that she would sever the mother-son relationship with me, saying that she didn't want a son as vicious as me. I was nearly splashed with sulfuric acid by David's extreme fans in the company's parking lot. My sister and my mother secretly discussed using my high school madness and the diagnosis certificate to send me to a mental hospital. In my past and present lives, I have only used these dirty tricks. Then my counterattack is about to begin, sister. David saw me losing ground and had no chance to fight back. At this time, David won his first Best Actor award and it was his birthday, so he held a grand celebration party. The scene was decorated magnificently, many of his fans were invited, and a live webcast was also organized. David politely thanked the fans in front of the live camera. The next step was to play the blessing videos recorded by the fans for him. On the big screen behind David, a picture flashed. It was a little blurry and the angle was hidden, as if someone had taken a secret shot. In the lounge of the set, another actor was eating a box lunch when David suddenly kicked him to the ground. David walked over and said condescendingly, "Fuck, Emily is my girlfriend. How dare you hit on my woman? You are such a guts boy." The actor quickly explained, "No, Mr. David. That day, I gave everyone on the set a cup of milk tea." David laughed and said, "Do you know what my status is and what your status is? You are so ignorant. Do you believe me? I will ask my girlfriend to ban you." The next second, David hit the corner of the table hard, and then fell to the ground. David said, "Think about it now. After the video of you bullying me is released, you will be banned. How are you going to make a living in the future?" The last scene is David opening the blood bag and smearing it all over his face. "Turn it off." David shouted and rushed over to block the big screen, but to no avail. The fans at the scene were going wild, and amid the noise, the names of David and Emily were rapidly becoming trending searches. One of them reads, "David is being bullied again," and the number of comments is increasing at an alarming rate. Mark sat next to me, holding his phone and typing frantically, "David, why are you bullied wherever you go? Does the whole world owe you something?" Then his post was voted the #1 hot comment. Netizens commented, "Help, why is David so crazy? The corner of the table is so sharp, he really could have hit it hard, it's bleeding." Another person replied, "How can David prove that others bullied him without bleeding? Stop calling him David and change his name to Joker." Someone else said, if I remember correctly, the original male lead for the film that David won the Best Actor award for was not him, but someone else. The actor was quite famous before, but he was later hidden. Someone replied, "If you can't get the role through audition, then you rely on your connections to get it, right?" Amid the heated discussions, another video became a hot topic. It was recorded at a university abroad. There was a racist who laughed loudly after a black African student made a speech, imitating his non-standard pronunciation. The person read it in a clear and loud voice and said, "Do you know what this is? This is standard British pronunciation, Joker." Then I grabbed him by the collar, punched him in the face, and cursed him back with a standard accent. I said, "Laugh, laugh, laugh. What's so funny? You laughed like that at your father's funeral too?" The opponent was furious and shouted that he wanted to fight me in a duel, but I punched him back again. The poster of the video is an ordinary international student. He said, "I was also born in the barren land of Africa, and was born at the bottom of society. But I am different from Mr. David. There is no piano in our village, and there is no kind sponsor who gives tens of thousands of dollars a month for living expenses. It took me nearly 30 years to muster up the courage to go out and see the world, but I was laughed at on the first day of studying abroad. I just can't stand people confusing right and wrong, and I don't want the people who helped me to be slandered like this." Netizens in the comments section said, "Am I seeing right? This is the James that David said bullied him and laughed at his English pronunciation?" Finally someone said it. Who would learn piano for more than 10 years if they were a kid from a poor family? The logic doesn't make sense, yet so many people believe it. Fuck, brother, you are so tough. Someone else said, sponsor, isn't David's sponsor Emily, James' sister? Who knows if he is trying to fight for property with his own brother and is deliberately slandering him? Then the screen played the video of my 18th birthday ceremony, which showed David jumping off the rooftop in order to get funding, and the surveillance video of another person in the orphanage pushing him down. There was also a lot of disgusting evidence, such as my sister's illegal and criminal acts of hiring a killer to kill Olivia, in which my mother was also involved. I was able to get these thanks to my dad. The last one is Sophia. Sophia Pua, her biological mother, forced her to commit suicide in front of her biological father for 7 years, and used her biological mother's life to exchange for a chance to enter Sophia's family. I spent huge sums of money to put all the things I collected by stringing together clues from past and present lives onto the hot searches one by one. Thanks to their previous operations, countless people were already paying attention to the development of this feud, which involved illegal crimes and instantly became a hot topic. The onlookers hurriedly called the police, and they didn't even have room to suppress the matter. Those who want to manipulate public opinion will eventually die because of it. Are you satisfied with this ending? The day my mom and Emily were taken away by the police, my dad threw out a divorce agreement. Emily couldn't believe it and yelled at him, "I knew it, I knew you favor boys over girls." Dad, am I not your daughter? Why are you so partial to James? I am also your child. My dad sighed and said, your mom favors you, so I favor your brother. Things in this world are always fair, aren't they? The projects that the James family and the Sophia family had cooperated on and snatched from me collapsed one after another, and they were charged with an additional crime of economic crime. I took over the devastated James family and merged it into the Thunder. Then, I went to meet with Mia, who had returned to the Sophia family. Mia is Sophia's half-sister and her parents are in a business marriage. Mia said angrily, when I was a child, I hated that woman and felt that she destroyed my family. Later I realized that if my father hadn't cheated, Sophia would never have appeared in this world. Mia picked up her coffee cup and said, it was her karma to die at the hands of her own daughter. I contacted her a year ago and reached a cooperation agreement. I will help Mia drive Sophia out of the Sophia family, but the premise is that I need Mia to help me with many resource exchanges in US. Including this hot search and public opinion war, many of them are Mia's work. Mia asked, but I'm curious, how did you guess that her mother's suicide was related to her? I smiled but didn't say anything, because in my previous life, Sophia also did the same to me. Before the verdict came down, I went to the prison to visit my old acquaintances. The first person I saw was my sister. She stared at me intently. I smiled and said, don't look at me like that, sister. I know what you want to ask. I've been driven out like a stray dog before. You don't think that I've been living a life of luxury abroad these past few years, do you? During the most tiring period, I could only close my eyes for a while every day. In addition to classes and company affairs, I was also busy contacting various contacts to find evidence of the three people's evil deeds from clues from my previous life. Because their methods are so skillful and leave no room for error, I believe that this is not the first time. Evil people cannot be evil only in front of me. There must be more darkness they bring in places I can't see. I guessed right. I went on to say, Emily, Mom always says that I owe you, that I shouldn't have been born, that I'm the product of a preference for boys over girls. You believe that, too, but I know very well that you're just using it as an excuse for your selfish behavior. You don't regard me as your brother, so I can now take everything you want by any means necessary. Unfortunately, I never planned to inherit the family business. If you hadn't been messing around, all of this would have been yours. So you have to remember, you're not fighting me, nor are you fighting against some old feudal ideas. You're just fighting for the sake of fighting, and sooner or later you'll lose to your own obsession. The second person I went to see was David. He was disheveled and had a haggard look. Even through the glass, his eyes were filled with hatred as if he wanted to eat me. He could no longer pretend to be polite and asked me with a grin that since I already had the evidence, why didn't I produce it earlier? David screamed madly, does it make sense for you to pretend to be a pig and eat the tiger? I replied, of course it's interesting, otherwise why would you pretend for so long? I stood up and said, of course I want you to think you have one, that's more interesting. Of course I can release these things earlier, but how can that be enough? I will let you think that you have won a great victory and got everything, and then watch everything turn to ashes before the dawn. This is what I experienced in my previous life, this time, it's your turn. The last person I went to see was Sophia. Actually, I didn't want to see her. David and I were enemies from the beginning to the end. Emily and I were connected by blood, and Sophia, after my love for her disappeared, she had nothing to do with me. But the police told me that Sophia wanted to see me. So I sat down with her face to face across the window. Sophia looked at me in silence for a long while, until I stood up impatiently and asked, "What do you want from me?" Sophia bit her lip and said, "Obviously that's not the case." Sophia spoke in a low voice, "Sophia's family should be mine, and we should be engaged." I paused and turned around suddenly. She looked at me steadily, with an unfathomable light flashing in her eyes. I looked at Sophia's face. If it weren't for the light scar on her forehead, for a moment I would have thought I was seeing Sophia from her previous life. When I came to my senses, I just found it ridiculous. I said, "Is it just an engagement? Why didn't you tell me what happened next? You relied on me to be recognized by the Sophia family, and then you teamed up with Emily to kill me." Sophia trembled and said, "But, a long, long time later, I regretted it." Sophia continued, "It's just that you don't know it anymore. I really hope you can know it. It's ridiculous, so funny." I said, "Yes, I've died once, so of course I don't know." I turned around, leaned against the glass, looked at her, and said word by word, "But even if you know, what can you do? Who cares about your regret? This time, I am the winner, and you are the one going to hell, Sophia. This is what you deserve." Winter came early this year, and when I left, it was already dark outside. Olivia called and said that she would be going abroad after the new year to start a new experiment at the research institute. I said, "Okay," and wished her a safe journey. After I hung up the phone, I received a message from Mark on WeChat, saying that he had already sat down in the Western restaurant and asked me to hurry over to pay the bill. I smiled and replied okay. Outside the car window, a crescent moon hung high in the sky, illuminating a corner of the inky night. When this night is over and the moon sets, my sun will rise again.